you ever left a conversation feeling like you lost, even though you said everything you thought you were supposed to? Like every word drained you, and yet somehow it was as if nothing you said landed? You walk away with that subtle ache in your throat, a strange hollowness in your chest, and a sinking suspicion. Maybe saying more didn't bring me closer to truth. Maybe it just exposed how much I needed to be heard. Most people live like this, talking endlessly, over-explaining, correcting, reacting, because deep down, they're terrified of what happens if they stop. They think silence is weakness, that stillness is surrender, that saying nothing means losing. But what if it's the opposite? What if silence isn't retreat, but presence? What if it's not a void, but a weapon? Nietzsche, iconoclast, fire-starter, brutal examiner of the soul, understood this better than anyone. He didn't just write for the thinkers. He wrote for the dangerous ones. The ones willing to live without needing the world's applause. He said, "Those who speak much say nothing, and those who must convince have already lost." In a society obsessed with expressing, defending, broadcasting every fleeting thought, Nietzsche invites you to do the unthinkable, to observe, to watch the chaos unfold without giving the enemy your position, to stop fighting for approval, because every time you argue to prove your worth, you've already accepted their rules. And if you're playing their game, you've already lost. You've been taught that silence is passive, that it's for the weak, the ones who don't know what to say. But Nietzsche flipped that lie on its head. Silence, in his philosophy, is the highest form of self-possession, because only those who are truly free within, who have nothing left to prove, can afford to say nothing. And when they do, it disturbs everyone in the room. Why? Because we're not wired for stillness. The average person doesn't speak to express, they speak to protect. Their voice is a shield, their words are armor. They need the noise because the silence is too loud. It reflects their own fear back at them, and that's what makes it so powerful. Silence is not absence, it's confrontation. And when you master it, people don't just hear you, they feel you. Nietzsche's silence isn't about being passive, it's about being impossible to manipulate. The moment you stop reacting, you stop being predictable. You stop giving them the cues they need to control you. That's when they panic. That's when their performance crumbles. And you don't even have to lift a finger. Because silence is not retreat, it's restraint. And restraint, when intentional, becomes command. The Übermensch, the overman that Nietzsche envisioned, is not the one who wins arguments. He's the one who no longer needs to have them. He doesn't react. He shapes reality by refusing to be pulled into the drama. His silence isn't emptiness, it's authority. And now you have to ask yourself something deeper. When you're silent, is it because you're afraid? Or because you don't need to say anything? Are you swallowing your words because you've been trained to avoid conflict? Or are you learning how to dominate without raising your voice? There's a difference, and Nietzsche saw it clearly. Most people confuse peace with surrender. They think being agreeable, avoiding confrontation, staying quiet is maturity. But often, it's just fear in disguise. And others know it. They feel your hesitation, they sense your need to be liked, and they take space. They take your voice, they take your presence, until one day you're not even in the room anymore. You're just a ghost, a placeholder, a background actor in someone else's play. That's the danger of submissive silence. But there's another kind, the kind Nietzsche respected. The silence of the individual who no longer needs to defend their existence. The kind of silence that isn't about hiding, but about standing so still the world moves around you. That's the silence of power, the silence of self-mastery. And it doesn't need to shout, because presence has a sound of its own. In part 2, you're going to learn how to use this silence, not as an escape, but as a calculated psychological weapon, a method of dismantling manipulation, revealing weakness, and holding power in a world addicted to noise. But first, let the silence sit. Let it expand in you. Let the urge to explain, justify, defend, die a little. That's where your power begins. That's where Nietzsche's path starts. And that's where yours can too. Before we continue, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not because I asked, but because somewhere inside, you already know you're done playing their game. Done being pulled into performances that drain you. Done speaking just to be heard by people who've already decided not to listen. You're not here to echo. You're here to remember who you were before they taught you to doubt it. Now let's go deeper. If silence is the sword, then presence is the hand that wields it. You don't win by staying quiet randomly. You win when silence is intentional, precise. Nietzsche warned us that reaction is a form of slavery. When you respond emotionally, impulsively, you're not choosing, you're being dragged. The real Overman doesn't react. He notices, he waits, he watches, and then, if needed, he acts with terrifying clarity. He uses observation as his first weapon. Picture this. Someone's monologuing, trying to dominate the room, control the tone, bait you. You don't interrupt, you don't jump in, you just watch. And not like someone waiting for their turn to talk. You watch like a predator listens for rustling leaves in the forest. You track the micro-expressions, the contradictions, the lies they don't know they're telling. You store it. And when you do speak, if you speak, you'll know exactly where to aim. You won't need 10 sentences, just one. Clean, surgical, fatal. This is the second weapon of silence, awareness without the need to respond. But here's where it gets really unnerving, for them. You let the pause linger. Most people can't handle it. They feel the silence as judgment, as rejection, as pressure. Because they're used to being validated, they're used to dominating the tempo. But you don't play by tempo, you create tension. Nietzsche understood this psychological phenomenon long before neuroscience caught up. Silence activates the other person's amygdala, the fear center. When you don't give them the reaction they expect, they spiral. They start to wonder what you're thinking. They project their insecurities onto you. Is he judging me? Does she see through me? What is he waiting for? And that's when the mask starts to fall. Because you've done nothing but said everything. You've turned silence into a psychological mirror. And most people are terrified of their own reflection. And now comes the third edge of the blade. Unpredictability. When you master silence, people don't know what to expect. They can't map your patterns. You become unreadable, inaccessible. You invert the power dynamic. They stop leading the conversation and start circling it around you. Your lack of need becomes their obsession. They start performing for your validation. And that's when you realize silence isn't passive at all. It's gravitational. It pulls them in while you remain centered. But this is where many get it wrong. They confuse silence with avoidance. But Nietzsche was not writing for cowards. He wasn't advocating withdrawal. His silence was tense, coiled, alive. It wasn't a retreat from the world, it was a reshaping of it. The Übermensch doesn't back down from confrontation. He simply doesn't feed it. He refuses to dance on a stage built for someone else's ego. And when he finally speaks, if he speaks, it's not for attention. It's because the words are undeniable. A sentence that doesn't try to convince. A line that ends the debate not with volume, but with truth. It cuts not because it's loud, but because it's precise. That's the final form of strategic silence, restraint that transforms into command. But let me stop here and ask you, how many times have you mistaken silence for peace, when deep down it was fear? How many times did you avoid conflict not out of mastery, but out of submission? You didn't want to rock the boat. You told yourself it wasn't worth it, but someone else walked away with your time, your energy, your voice. That's not silence. That's surrender in disguise. And Nietzsche had a word for this too, slave morality. It's a value system built to protect the weak by glorifying passivity. It rewards you for staying small, for avoiding friction, for being agreeable at your own expense. It teaches you that being good means sacrificing your truth, and then it tells you to feel proud for doing it. That's not virtue, that's programming, and Nietzsche didn't write for the programmed. He wrote for those ready to burn the script. So ask yourself, is your silence the silence of mastery, or the silence of erasure? Are you shaping your world, or being shaped by theirs? In the next part, we'll go even deeper. Because it's not enough to understand this silence. You need to use it. You'll learn how to wield it like a blade, precisely, consciously, ruthlessly. And when you do, no one will ever control you again. You're still here. That already says something most people will never say out loud. I'm ready to see what's behind the noise, ready to stop being pulled by strings you didn't tie. And now, it's time to go from theory to weapon, from awareness to precision. You've learned that silence isn't absence. It's not hesitation. It's not fear. It's power withheld. So let's turn that potential into movement, strategic, surgical, and absolute. The first rule of silent power is brutal in its simplicity. Be silent when your will screams for a response. That moment, when someone insults you, misrepresents you, disrespects you, and every cell in your body wants to react, is the moment you get to choose. Will I play the game they've designed for me? Or will I stand so still that the game breaks apart around me? Nietzsche would say, "You are still a prisoner if you need to be understood." True silence begins when that need dies, when the itch to defend yourself fades, when you no longer seek justice in the eyes of others because you have become justice itself. The second weapon is observation. While others spill their insecurities under the illusion of confidence, you are collecting data, not to gossip, not to manipulate, but to know. The more you watch, the more predictable they become. People reveal their emotional blueprints within seconds. If you're still enough to see it, a raised eyebrow, a rushed answer, a contradiction between posture and tone, you catch it, you store it, you learn to see the wound behind the insult, the fear behind the arrogance. And suddenly their power over you evaporates, because when you can see through someone, they can no longer use you as a mirror for their mask. The third weapon, time. Let silence stretch, let it ache. Don't just pause, inhabit the pause. The human mind hates uncertainty. It starts writing scripts, filling in blanks, projecting fears. While they're waiting for your reaction, the silence grows teeth. They sweat under their own assumptions. A single glance from you, held just long enough, can unravel their entire sense of control. They will start to doubt their own certainty, and you haven't even opened your mouth. Nietzsche didn't just understand this, he embodied it. His entire philosophy was a rejection of the impulsive, reactive, crowd-pleasing self. He demanded something rarer, self-sovereignty. Which brings us to the fourth and final weapon, unpredictability. When you don't explain yourself, when you don't respond on cue, when you don't play the emotional rhythm they expect, you become a problem they can't solve. And what the mind cannot predict, it fears. Most people don't fear cruelty, they fear ambiguity. And silence, when mastered, makes you unreadable. This flips the social dynamic on its head. You are no longer responding to their energy, they are adjusting to yours. You become the gravitational pull in every interaction. But let's be clear, this is not about playing cold games. Nietzsche was not an advocate for emotional detachment as cruelty. He was a philosopher of strength. And strength in its highest form is restraint with intent. Your silence is not the absence of participation. It is a position, a decision, a conscious refusal to play roles written by someone else. And when the moment comes and you speak, it lands like thunder, not because it's loud, but because it is true. Yet here's the darkest part of this journey. Not all silence is power. There is a silence that rots, that corrodes, that hollows you out from within. A silence that looks calm from the outside but is born of fear, avoidance, submission. This is not Nietzsche's silence. This is the silence of the domesticated, the silenced, the nice one, the one who's always keeping the peace. But it's not peace, is it? It's peace paid for in self-erasure. How many times have you let someone take space from you because you didn't want to be difficult? How often have you downplayed your intuition just to avoid making someone uncomfortable? How often have you told yourself it's not a big deal when everything in you screamed that it was? That's not strategy. That's slow spiritual death. That's the trap Nietzsche warned us about, the morality of slaves. Systems of guilt and submission dressed up as kindness and maturity. But here's the secret Nietzsche reserved for those willing to see through it all. You don't have to fight for your place in the world. You already are your place in the world. And your silence, when aligned with that truth, becomes more than a tactic. It becomes your throne. In part 4, we take the final step, how to become the Übermensch. Not metaphorically, not poetically, practically, tangibly. How to walk into any room and own it, not with noise, but with the full weight of a soul that owes no one an explanation. Like and subscribe now, because in the next chapter, we aren't just talking about power, we're becoming it. This is the moment where understanding must become embodiment. We're done intellectualizing silence like it's just an idea. You've seen what it does, you've felt the pull, and now you're ready to become the one others feel when you enter a room, even when you say nothing. This is the final piece, how to become what Nietzsche called the Übermensch, not as some mythic ideal, but as a living force. A presence so self-contained, it disturbs everything that tries to define it. Let's be clear, this isn't about pretending to be above others. It's about finally stepping outside the games they want you to play. The Übermensch is not a king among peasants. He is simply the one who no longer negotiates his existence. He creates his values. He chooses his reactions. He silences not just the room, but the internal chaos that once demanded to be heard. And this is where the real war begins. Not with the world, but with your own conditioning. The first death you must face is the death of the pleaser. The version of you that confuses silence with niceness. That believes staying quiet is a virtue, even when your boundaries are being devoured. Nietzsche called this domesticated surrender, a silence that looks composed but is rooted in fear. It's the silence that tells you, don't stir the waters, don't upset them, don't speak your truth. And so you don't, and they take, and you disappear. But the Übermensch does not disappear. His silence is not an escape, it's an imprint. You feel it in the way he looks at you, in the fact that he does not respond to provocation, in the way he can sit in the discomfort of misunderstanding without flinching. He doesn't explain, he embodies, he doesn't react, he defines. That's the power Nietzsche gives you, not to dominate others, but to no longer be dominated by yourself. So how do you get there? Start here. Kill the idea that you owe anyone a response. Truth does not beg to be heard. It exists with or without an audience. Stop defending yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Every time you do, you shrink your truth down to their level of perception. Let it be too much. Let it be too still. Let it disturb them. That is where growth begins, not in comfort, but in the pressure of presence. Second, treat silence like a discipline. Not a fallback. Not a passive default, but a conscious training ground. Practice not reacting. Practice letting conversations breathe until they collapse on their own. Let people speak and reveal everything. Watch them over-explain, contradict, spiral. Do not interrupt. Your silence is not permission, it's strategy. Third, reverse the lens. Stop using your silence to protect others' comfort. Use it to enforce your own sovereignty. When you do not speak, it is not because you're scared, it's because you've already said enough, just by being there. This shift changes everything, because suddenly, your silence becomes sacred. It becomes presence. It becomes declaration. Nietzsche wrote for those who are no longer willing to be puppets of societal guilt, for those who are ready to die to their old selves and be reborn untouchable. The Übermensch walks through the same world as everyone else, but not one drop of it defines him. He is not here to fit in. He is here to reveal what's been forgotten, that you were never meant to apologize for existing. So look at your life. How many times have you allowed your truth to shrink in the name of peace? How many times have you mistaken comfort for control? From this moment forward, your silence must change its tone. It must no longer be the silence of fear, avoidance, or guilt. It must become the silence that disrupts, the silence that declares, the silence that says, I do not explain myself, not because I am afraid, but because I am whole. Comment below, I choose the silence that commands respect. Say it not just so I know you made it this far, but so you know that something inside you has shifted. And if it has, subscribe, because what's coming next will go even deeper, into power, into perception, into presence, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that ends the argument before it begins, because the weak shout, the strong remain silent, and the wise, they choose when. You are now one of them.